Hello, welcome to the channel. I'm Michael Smith, Awaken to Truth, and it has been quite some time since I have put a video up. And the main reason behind that, besides being very busy, is that I recently moved from Florida to Cincinnati. So I had been in Ohio previously when I started this channel, and then we moved to Florida, and there was a big time gap of, I think, a couple of months or so before I did another video. Then I started them back in Florida. Then we moved again. And so I think the moving is done, Lord willing. I think we're going to settle in here in Cincinnati, I hope, for many years to come. And hopefully that means no more interruptions with this channel. I've had some major interruptions as I've started this channel and haven't really been able to kind of keep it going consistently. I hope now that that's over and we'll be able to, I'll be able to upload the videos, on a consistent basis, 1 to 2 videos a week, and we'll go from there. But thank you, those of you who have remained subscribed. I appreciate you watching. Those of you listening by podcast, thank you so much. You have continued to listen to I guess old podcasts, because I've gotten the numbers from the podcast, and several hundred of you have been listening each week, I guess, unless some of you are listening a lot of times to different podcasts. I don't know. But thank you. Those of you who have continued to listen to the podcast. And I want to continue. I want to get back to doing some more podcast type formats. I'll do those, and I'll probably just upload them to YouTube. So everything will be video format as well if you want to watch it. But I do want to do some of the longer 25, 30, 35-minute podcasts for those of you clearly that, just like listening to the audio portion. But let's get into the topic today. And so today I want to talk about something that probably has been discussed maybe among friends, or maybe among family, or maybe you've heard it discussed at your church, or whatever the case may be. But should Christians or the church, if you want to use that as a blanket term for Christians, should the church or should Christians get engaged in the culture wars or politics, so to speak? And I heard a prominent minister, at least in some circles. He's prominent in the sense that he pastors a church of several thousand people. But I heard a prominent minister recently, is actually on a YouTube clip, and I heard him make the statement to whoever he was preaching to. I think he was preaching somewhere other than his church when he made this statement. But he said, we as the church have got to stop engaging in the culture wars and the politics of our day. We just need to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, stay away from all the rest of it, because it's not doing any good. All it's doing is making people depressed, making people unhappy, making people feel bad. That was his statement. That was his opinion. And so when I heard that, I thought about it. As I typically like to do, I like to think about things. Now, like anybody else, I can have knee-jerk reactions to stuff. But as I've gotten a little bit older, I realize that sometimes my knee-jerk reactions are not necessarily the best, or not necessarily the most wise. And so I thought about it for a couple of days. And this is what I came up with. Of course, this is my opinion. You're free to agree, disagree, whatever. But I do not agree with that minister that the church does not need to get involved in politics/culture war. We certainly have that going on, and the politics and the culture war are one and the same. You can't really separate the two, because the culture war is essentially centered and woven around politics. And so the reason I disagree with him is, well, first off, let me tell you, from a certain point of view, I understand what he's saying. And I think the easy thing for pastors or ministers to do, those of you that might be new to this channel, or just started watching, or maybe you've never heard me say this, I pastored and I was in full-time ministry for quite a few years, like 12 years. I pastored about 7 or 8 of those 12 years, and I traveled in and out of different churches the remainder of the time. I am still ordained in the ministry, graduated from seminary and then postgraduate degree from Regent University, all that good stuff. So I'm no longer pastoring a church. I am still preaching at times in churches, but I have transitioned professionally that I am working in the financial services field, insurance, financial products, retirement planning, all that kind of stuff. But anyhow, I have been in that world where I pastored people, and oftentimes pastoring people, it is easy to just give the most simplest answer. Well, just stay out of all that because it's divisive and whatnot. That's a simple thing to say. But it's also in my opinion, not maybe instructing people or discipling people in the best possible way. Yes, for some people, they do need to stay out of it. When they're getting angry, when they're arguing on Facebook, when they're doing absolutely nothing productive, they need to stay out of it. If it's robbing you of your happiness, if it's robbing you of your contentment, if you have a lack of peace because you're always going around stirring up these arguments, on social media or maybe in person, I don't know, with people at work or people you come across, then yes, maybe you need to go to the sideline and you need to take a break. But I think it is a, simplistic statement at best and maybe misguided at worst to simply say Christians / the church need to stay out of this culture war in politics. We just need to preach the gospel and let everything take care of itself. And there's many reasons why I don't agree with that. But I think that number one, the church and Christians, so to speak, have to speak to the culture. If you don't speak to the culture, what are you going to do? Like if you're just preaching some theology out there or some biblical concept out there or some nice principle out there, if it doesn't meet people where they live, then what are you doing? Okay, because we can all find churches like that they say nice things, they give you good principles, or maybe some churches that are overly theological and they'll preach a lot of theology and doctrine, but in the sense of actually meeting people where they are, they're not doing it. They're falling short, and therefore there's going to be a disconnect. In order for the church to be effective, the church has to be able to speak to the culture. And right now, the culture is going through a lot of turmoil in culture wars. And these subjects are not disconnected from the life of the church. Number one, such as, freedom of speech. That's something that is being battled right now. You've got people on one side of the political aisle. They think that if you're saying something that is false or something that is untrue or misinformation, that those people need to be shut down. The problem is, who is the arbiter of what misinformation is or is not? And that directly impacts the church, because what happens when these misinformation specialists begin to say that some of the teachings of the church are just misinformation, they're not true. It's a slippery slope. You've got the abortion war taking place. I did a video not too long ago about that. So I'm not going to get into that a whole lot, but basically we have to be able to speak to these issues that are taking place that society is battling. You've got oddly kind of a racial type of war taking place, where you've got one side of the aisle acting like anybody that doesn't stay lockstep with them is completely racist, which is insane, but that's what they're saying. So we have to be able to effectively speak to these things. And I was in the office the other day, and I began to have a conversation with a guy who is a little bit younger than me. He's 31. He told me I'm 40. And we started to discuss things. And just in the middle of that discussion, he throws out his opinion. Now, I wasn't saying anything politically. I wasn't saying anything religiously. If you know me, which, some of you might, most of you probably don't, then I'm not the person that goes around like pushing my opinions on everybody. If you want to ask me my opinion, I'll be glad to tell you, but I don't go around pushing my opinions on everybody. But he just, in passing, somehow made the statement. He said, I can't believe our country has come to a place where people won't put a mask on, but we're going to tell a woman what they can do with their body. So he made two political statements there. One, the mask. You can say, oh, that's science. No, it's not really science. It's a political statement. People overwhelmingly of one side of the aisle, the left, begin to become not just aware of masks. Like, well, I think maybe it might be good in a crowded room during a viral season. No, they became utterly obsessed with masks. Like, if you didn't wear a mask, you were a horrible person that wanted people to die. And so there's political statement number one. Political statement number two is the abortion. He compares those that don't want to wear a mask to hypocrites because they don't want to put a mask on their body, but yet they want to tell a woman what they can do with their own body. And so that obviously is not great logic. And this is a pretty smart individual, generally speaking, professionally speaking. But once he said that, I simply said, do you really think that's the same? Wearing a mask versus taking the life of a fetus that we know has a heartbeat very early on, and that certainly within a few months in, you can see the form of the little human being. Do you think that that is like one and the same, that the two are equal? I said, because one is a person just not wanting to put a cloth covering over their face. The other is a mother who has made the decision to take the life. Now, I didn't make any statements whether, abortion should be legal, should it not be legal, whatever. I've got my own views on that. I think regardless of what the state says, I think that our view should be that we should push for life. And I wish that the government, regardless of whether they allowed abortion or whether they didn't allow abortion, I wish that their stance was they pushed for life, even if they did allow it, but again, I'm not going to get into that particular issue. And so we begin to engage and we begin to talk. And as we begin to talk, something else came about. And we weren't having a heated debate. I just wanted him to defend his logic. I wanted him to tell me what his logic was. And he really couldn't, because that is an illogical statement to compare someone wearing a mask to someone who has made the decision not to carry their baby to term. And so then he began to talk about misinformation. So he said that those that are spreading misinformation have to be stopped. They have to be silenced. And this individual is an immigrant to the country. And I said, well, you know what? That's not really how America works. And this person's an entrepreneur, to a degree. They've got their own business in the financial industry, got their own clients and all of that. I said, that's not how America works. I said, do you think our company is a good company? He said, yeah. I said, do you think that there's other companies out there that do things that are not really the best for the clients and that possibly are maybe even bad for the clients, but they're good for themselves? In other words, they're pushing certain degrees of financial misinformation. He said, absolutely. I said, well, then what is the solution to that? Do we just shut them all down because we deem it as financial misinformation? Or do we allow the marketplace of ideas to begin to determine which companies are the most successful? And he thought about it. And obviously, his answer was he thought that, you just let the marketplace work out who is the most successful. And I said, then it's the same with the freedom of speech. If people don't like the church saying a certain thing because they disagree with it, if they don't like the church's position on this, fine. Let everybody make their own decision about what's said. If there's somebody out there that is spreading horrible ideas, let the greater, sum of society be the one that judges that. And if the ideas are bad, they're not going to catch on. But generally what you find is those that are worried about shutting down everyone else's bad ideas except for their own are those that actually have horrible ideas. And they know that they're not good ideas, at least to some degree, or at least they know that the masses might prefer other ideas. So therefore they want to stop the flow of those ideas so that only theirs can be accepted. And we have that going on right now. And these are things that the church has to be able to effectively speak to. These are not things that we can just ignore, in my opinion, because we've come to a crossroads where politics, morality, the church, all of these different things have come to a conversion, and just a conversion point. And just to simply sit back and say, oh, we're not going to address those, we're not going to have anything to do with those, I think is going to make the church, the visible church, even less effective than we have been in recent years. And if you've listened to much of my stuff, you know that I am not of the opinion that we as the American church have been overly effective in recent years. But if we want to become less effective, I think we just sit back, take our hands off and say, oh, we're just going to ignore everything that is going on with the culture. But we have always been a place in this country that has operated on the principle that we're going to allow the marketplace of ideas. And the ideas that are the best are going to catch on. People are going to receive them. They're going to become popular. The ideas that are the worst are going to fall by the wayside. The ideas that are okay, maybe you're going to have some success, but not a whole lot of success. But we allow the marketplace of ideas to work itself out. And in the end, usually it works out relatively okay, because there is a wisdom in the whole of society. The whole of society has a particular wisdom, and human beings have an uncanny ability to begin to figure out what is good for them and what is not good for them. And we could use a whole lot less central planning and intervention of, be it tech companies or be it government or be it whoever, of telling us what's good for us. Because at the end of the day, I believe that humanity in general, and Americans specifically, are relatively good about figuring out what is good for us as an individual and what is good for us as a society. So it's my opinion, it's my belief, we can't just take our hands off the wheel. We have to engage in these things, and we have to engage in these things in a way that is not overly offensive, overly abrasive, and we have to be willing to give and take and listen to other people's viewpoints, even if we absolutely disagree with those viewpoints. And to this individual's credit that I was talking to a week or so ago, even though I disagreed completely with much of what he said, he never got upset. You could tell he was thinking about some of the things that I was saying. I was trying to listen to the things that he said. There certainly were some areas of agreement that we had. There were many areas of disagreement, but I could have, as a Christian and even as an ordained minister, just said, you know what? I'm going to stay away from this kind of stuff. I am going to just simply preach the gospel to him right now. I don't think that that would have been overly effective, because this person, A, is not a believer. They may never be a believer. I don't know. But human beings oftentimes wake up to things in degrees. Okay? If you're a Christian, you believe that the ultimate truth is Jesus Christ is the truth, the life, and the way. But there's a whole lot of other truth that is not maybe directly connected to your Christian faith, but that does not make it any less true. But oftentimes people will wake up to smaller truth before they wake up to larger truth. And when we just try to cram a particular ideology or doctrine or theology down their throat, oftentimes we shut them off to being able to receive anything else from us, instead of being there along the way, engaging with them and allowing the Holy Spirit to work, and not thinking that we somehow can change everybody and convert everybody to our way of thinking, our way of ideas, and our pattern of life. And so I hope that this video has given you something to think about. I know it's been a while since I've put something up, so please, if you would, engage in the comments, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you have not already. Those podcast listeners, thank you for continuing to remain faithful, listening to the audio format of this. God bless you. Thank you, guys. And I will be back with another video very soon.